Good morning and welcome to Law of the Weird. My name is Tom Swanson. I'm a Houston attorney who's been in practice for over 35 years, but I started reading about law long before I became a lawyer and actually began reading appeal court cases in 1971. And ever since I was a youngster, I've been fascinated about the law and I remember as a youngster, I would have chores to do at home before my parents got home. And I would get my chores done and then watch Perry Mason on television. Um, when I went into the military, I had the opportunity to work in the law. And when I was in my training program early in the morning, I began the process of going to the law library in the office where I worked and reading appeal court cases that were in books called Reporters in the law library. And I mean, it was really fascinating to realize that they had all of these real stories about real things that happened to real people, some of which were extremely weird. And it just kept me reading. Well, when I went to law school, beginning in 1978, I began the process of reading more and more cases, as part of the educational process for lawyers. And it was at that time I read probably one of the weirdest cases I've ever read. And it was kind of an offside situation where the appeal court case I was reading had to do with a concept in law called sovereign immunity. This refers to restrictions on the ability of someone to sue the government for the government's misconduct, such as negligence. At any rate, I was reading this case, and it was interesting enough. But when I got to a footnote at the end of the case, it blew my mind. I went back and read the case again, and said, "Man, is this some crazy shit or what?" Well, time went on. I had many more cases to read in law school, and I get licensed, and then I start reading cases for what reason? Money, that sort of thing. And I kind of forgot about this case. And then one night, I'm just, trolling through the channels on television, and I come to Larry King, who I rarely watch because I kind of grew up listening to him in the middle of the night in Miami on the radio. But I was stunned to find that the major players in this strange case I had read years ago were the guests on the show. So I want to share with you today the case involving Linda Riss and Burton Pugach. This case goes back to the 1950s when Burton Pugach, who was a well-to-do lawyer in New York City, began having a relationship with a woman about 10 years younger by the name of Linda Riss. And at the time, Burton Pugach was married, and it was one of those things where he wasn't completely truthful with Linda about his status. And anyway, apparently she found out, and there came a point in time where she broke up with Burton, and Burton wouldn't leave her alone. They call it stalking now. I don't know what they called it in the 1950s, maybe just being a general pain in the ass. But at any rate, he was stalking her and constantly contacting her, telling her that if I can't have you, no one can, and this sort of thing. And then in around June of 1959, Linda Riss gets engaged to another man. This has such a tremendous effect on Burton Pugach that he hires someone to throw lie in her face. And so this person he hires does his job well, throws lie in Linda Riss's face, blinding her in one eye, damaging her other eye, and causing scarring. Okay, the the quote hitman with the lie gets 15 years in prison. Burton Pugach gets 14 years in prison and is disbarred as an attorney. Surprise, surprise. And so that that leads ultimately to how the case that I encountered in law school. Linda Riss sued the city of New York, saying that she had repeatedly begged the police department to provide her with some kind of protection because of these imminent threats that were being given to her by Burton Pugach. She claimed that they paid her no mind. She ended up being, being disfigured and otherwise injured. And when she sued, the case went to trial before a jury. But the judge, before the jury had an opportunity to issue a verdict, held that there was no legal claim that she could maintain, and basically entered what was called a directed verdict, in which he found that based on this concept of sovereign immunity, meaning you can't sue the government for misconduct, that she had no claim. And then of course she appealed, and that's the case that I encountered when I was in law school. The weird part, though, comes in 1974, and that is Burton Pugach gets out of prison, and he and Linda Riss get married. Imagine that shit, okay? Someone disfigures you, blinds you in one eye, causes you all kinds of misery. And what do? You marry him. Yeah. Not only that, but the marriage lasted. They were married from 1974 until Linda died in 2013 at the age of 75. Weird or what? By the way, Burton Pugach, I'm making this presentation in 2017. Burton Pugach is still alive. He's age 90. What he did when he got out of prison and married Linda was he went to work as a paralegal, since he couldn't get his law license back. And that was how he supported himself down the road. So all I can tell you is love is a crazy thing, and it creates all kinds of weird cases, okay? So for those of you who like to look at reporters, okay, because you're weird like me, the case that led me to find out all about this was styled Linda Riss versus City of New York. And it is a decision by the highest appeals court in New York, the Court of Appeals of New York. The case was decided in 1968, and it is found at volume 240, Northeastern 2nd, beginning at page 860, or 22, New York Reporter 2nd, beginning at page 579. Okay, that does it for the weirdness of the day. This is Tom Swanson signing off. Have a great one.